Welcome everyone. Well, those of you who are here so far. I'm going to give people a second to get into the stream. It is, so much has been going on. Is it Tuesday afternoon? I believe it's Tuesday afternoon. It's definitely the 14th. Yes, it's Tuesday afternoon. We are going to do a live update here of some breaking news that came out this afternoon from Sean Spicer's press briefing. So we wanted to let you guys know what happened at the briefing in case you didn't see it, and also give you a chance to discuss the briefing and discuss this new news that came out. So let's just take a second. I'm going to wait a second for more people to come in. Let's see, I want to also get some light on my face, so we'll do that. Welcome again. We are here to give an update about the Sean Spicer press briefing. Some really interesting details came out today that Sean Spicer gave about General Flynn's resignation. So we want to get those details to you and give you a chance to discuss them. If you want to send in a comment during this stream as we talk about the new details about General Flynn's resignation, if you'd like to send in a comment or ask a question, you can always reach me here. Best way to do that is to go to my Twitter, which is at Lookner, at Lookner, and you can direct message me there, and I'll be able to look on my computer and get that. And also, the other way to reach me is to email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. So let's begin. I just want to pull my Twitter up so I can get your messages if you send any, and my right side email. And let's talk. So let's talk about what Sean Spicer said in his in his hearing, in his press briefing today. So Sean Spicer today in his press briefing, some really interesting details came out about General Flynn's resignation. And to catch you up, I'm sure a lot of you know this, but just to rehash, General Michael Flynn, who was President Trump's national security advisor, resigned last night, and he has already been replaced with a temporary replacement by President Trump. And the background to this was that General Flynn, after President Trump had been elected, but before President Trump took office, General Flynn had a conversation or conversations with the Russian ambassador to the United States. And in those conversations, General Flynn discussed, according to supposedly transcripts that are out there, General Flynn discussed United States sanctions, existing sanctions on Russia. And in the aftermath of that, General Flynn told Vice President Mike Pence that he had this conversation or conversations, but he also said he did not discuss these sanctions. So Mike Pence, in the middle of January, went publicly out on a number of shows and said General Flynn did not talk about the sanctions with the Russian ambassador. And then a few days ago, it came out that General Flynn had talked about these sanctions with the Russian ambassador. Vice President Pence was reportedly very unhappy about this. And this all culminated last night with General Flynn resigning. So we heard some new information from Sean Spicer in his press briefing, which just took place about an hour and a half ago. And I'm sorry, there was a bit of a delay in getting on the air, so I'm sorry for the delay in that. So I just want to go down, first of all, and talk about the different information that we learned from Sean Spicer today in his press briefing. So one starting point is that this was not General Flynn resigning on his own. This resignation was, according to Sean Spicer, General Flynn was asked to resign by President Trump. So that was an initial piece of news. I see some of the coverage of it, and I think people are losing that as a piece of news, because there was this question of like, did General Flynn just resign on his own? Was President Trump not sure whether to ask him to resign, or how did that happen? So according to Sean Spicer today, President Trump did ask last night General Flynn to resign. Another piece of information that came out. So Sean Spicer says that the reason President Trump asked General Flynn to resign was because of a, quote, trust issue. So Sean Spicer said that President Trump had lost trust in General Flynn. And so he was careful to point out that this was not a legal matter. It was not a legal matter. The reason for President Trump's asking General Flynn to resign was not because he felt that General Flynn had broken the law. Again, to repeat, this is important news that came out in the briefing today. Sean Spicer said President Trump asked General Flynn to resign because it was a trust issue. He had lost trust in General Flynn. Now, there's some more detail about that which came out, which was very interesting to me. This might have been the most interesting thing in the whole press briefing to me. So this is how Sean Spicer, in Sean Spicer's words, I wrote this down as an exact quote. This is how Sean Spicer described what happened. He said, "The evolving and eroding level of trust as a result of this situation and a series of other questionable instances is what led the president to ask for General Flynn's resignation." That's very important. I want to read that again. This is a quote. I wrote this down from the press briefing. Sean Spicer said, "The evolving and eroding level of trust as a result of this situation and a series of other questionable instances is what led the president to ask for General Flynn's resignation." Now, the first thing I want you to notice there is the phrase, "a series of other questionable instances." So Sean Spicer, by saying this, was saying the resignation, President Trump lost trust in General Flynn, and that's why he asked for his resignation. But it was not just, the reason he lost trust was not just over this whole thing with the talking to the Russian ambassador about sanctions and not telling the administration this. Because Sean Spicer specifically said, the evolving and eroding level of trust as a result of this situation and a series of other questionable instances. Now, what are those questionable instances? I watched the rest of the briefing and he never said anything about this. So that to me is very big news, actually. Sean Spicer says there that the reason General Flynn was asked to resign was because of eroding trust due to this one instance having to do with talking to the Russian ambassador about sanctions and not telling the administration this initially. But that one instance and multiple series of other questionable instances. So what was that series of other questionable instances? I had never heard this before. I don't believe anybody had heard about this before. So that's a really big question here. It makes the story very different because it's not President Trump asking General Flynn to resign over what happened with the Russian ambassador. The story being told is of President Trump gradually losing trust in General Flynn over a series of things. And let me also say, it should be emphasized, note the language here that Sean Spicer used. He said, the evolving and eroding level of trust. Evolving and eroding. That suggests over a long period of time. So the picture being presented here that Sean Spicer presented in the press briefing today was not a picture where there was this one thing with the Russian ambassador, and when it came out that General Flynn had actually talked to the Russian ambassador about sanctions, and it came and President Trump realized, oh, well, he didn't tell us that before. President Trump was just like, well, we can't trust him anymore. That's not what happened. What happened, according to Sean Spicer, is over the past, I don't know how many weeks or months, a number of instances, a number of things happened that gradually made President Trump have less trust in General Flynn. And as of right now, we only know about one instance, this instance with the Russian ambassador, and not fully telling the administration what they talked about. So there's this big question now, which is, what is this series of other questionable instances that supposedly General Flynn did that made President Trump gradually lose trust in General Flynn? So that is a very interesting question. That's a big piece of news to me that came out in the press briefing, and right now we don't know what that is. So that's an issue. And I just want to emphasize, there's other language like this in the press conference, in the press briefing too. So Sean Spicer also said this. He said, the president got to the point where there was critical mass and then asked for the resignation. Again, Sean Spicer said the president got to the point where there was critical mass and then asked General Flynn to resign. Critical mass suggests more than one thing. critical mass suggests there were a bunch of things that General Flynn did which made President Trump lose confidence and lose trust in General Flynn. What were those things? So to me, we have so far two big pieces of news I think we got from this press briefing, and I have more than that too. But two big pieces of news were, to repeat: one, General Flynn was asked to resign by President Trump. He didn't resign on his own. Two, he wasn't. Actually, there's more than two. Two, the reason he was asked to resign is because President Trump lost trust in General Flynn. It was not because President Trump thought General Flynn was in some kind of legal jeopardy. It was because President Trump lost trust in General Flynn. Important point three that Sean Spicer said is President Trump lost trust in General Flynn gradually over time because of a number of different things General Flynn did, not just this one thing involving the Russian ambassador and not telling the administration fully what he spoke to the Russian ambassador about. So the third important point is that President Trump's trust was lost because of a number of instances and we only know of one right now, of the thing with the ambassador, but we don't know what the other instances are that things General Flynn did that caused President Trump to lose trust over time in him. So all those 3 points are important points we got from the press briefing. There's another one I want to mention, though, which I think is also really important. Where is it here? I wrote it down just for a second. Oh, this I thought was extremely important and really interesting. Sean Spicer said, unequivocally, he said, the administration's position is that General Flynn did nothing wrong in talking to the ambassador and in talking to the ambassador about sanctions. So this is a very interesting point. So it's not just that Sean Spicer said General Flynn did nothing wrong in talking to the ambassador. That initially, when I heard him talk, was what I thought he was saying. And this is something that General Flynn himself said last night. General Flynn in his resignation letter said something like, hey, for people in my position who are coming into office and haven't gotten officially into office yet, it is entirely normal for us to reach out and talk to other foreign diplomats and this kind of thing. And I have heard a number of people who I respect and think would know about this thing say that since General Flynn resigned. I've heard a number of experts, I would call them, say, General Flynn's talking to the ambassador of Russia and talking to other foreign diplomats before he's actually in office, that alone is like a normal thing. That's not like a crazy thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It happens commonly. But that's not just what Sean Spicer said. What Sean Spicer said is, we don't have a problem, and we think General Flynn did nothing wrong in talking to the Russian ambassador about sanctions. Again, Sean Spicer said the administration's position is that there is nothing wrong. General Flynn did nothing wrong in talking about sanctions, existing sanctions, with the Russian ambassador. Now that's a very important point, and it's a really interesting point, and here's why. There's this law called the Logan Act, and the Logan Act basically says, actually I should look it up and read it to you, but it basically says that citizens who are not officially appointed to do so can't negotiate with other countries, can't conduct foreign policy. Let's see if I can call it up quickly here. Let's see. I'm going. If it's short, I'll read it to you. It says, okay, this is the text of the Logan Act. It's only a couple sentences long. Any citizen of the United States, wherever he may be, without authority of the United States, directly, or any citizen who, without the authority of the United States, wherever he may be, who directly or indirectly commences or carries on any correspondence or intercourse with any foreign government or any officer or agent thereof, with intent to influence the measures or conduct of any foreign government or any officer or agent thereof in relation to any disputes or controversies with the United States, or to defeat the measures of the United States, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. So that's the Logan Act. So roughly speaking, the Logan Act says no citizen without authority from, like, the president, I would assume, or the administration, can conduct foreign policy to try to, like, affect a foreign country's behavior without authority. Now, many people, I would say the vast majority of people I've heard talk about this have said, well, it's probably or it's definitely a violation of the Logan Act what General Flynn did. So, because he was talking to a Russian ambassador when he wasn't approved by the Obama administration, and he was talking about the sanctions, existing sanctions, and so there's this idea that I think the thought is out there that General Flynn was trying to say, hey, don't react too hard to the sanctions. And I've heard some reports that said General Flynn was encouraging the Russians to not react too hard to the sanctions. Don't react too hard to the sanctions because, when we get in office, maybe we're going to try to like have a better relationship with you. So anyways, but the point is that most people think, that I've heard, that there's a serious possibility that General Flynn violated the Logan Act when he talked to the Russian ambassador about sanctions. Now, this is why it's really interesting to me that Sean Spicer said, this was unequivocal, he was very clear about this, and he said this repeated numbers of times. He said, we, the administration, and President Trump, do not think General Flynn did anything wrong, anything illegal in talking to the Russian ambassador about sanctions, that goes against what a lot of people have said General Flynn very possibly violated the Logan Act, or probably or definitely violated the Logan Act when he talked to the Russian ambassador about sanctions. And note that Sean Spicer didn't say, well, we think that he probably didn't do anything wrong. Sean Spicer said, the administration thinks General Flynn did nothing wrong and nothing illegal in talking to the Russian ambassador about sanctions. So that itself is a really interesting point that came from the administration today. And he also said that when so the Justice Department basically went to the White House counsel, and I wrote that Don McGahn, and this was on January 26th, and that's when the Justice Department said, hey, we heard about this conversation that General Flynn had with the Russian ambassador. We heard about what he talked about. There may be some legal issues here, or there may be some chance that he could be blackmailed because of this. They said things like this. I know they said the thing about the blackmail from reports. I think they might have said something about there may be legal issues here. I'm not sure. But anyways, the Justice Department went to Don McGahn, the White House counsel, on the 26th. And according to Sean Spicer today, Sean Spicer said once Don McGahn, the White House counsel, heard this from the Justice Department, they immediately convened this meeting in the White House, and they decided that no laws were broken. So they decided that there was nothing illegal about this. So the White House really thinks that even if General Flynn discussed the sanctions with the Russian ambassador, it didn't violate the Logan Act and it didn't break the law. Now, there's a number of reasons they might think this. Perhaps they think, well, the way the law is written, as I just read the Logan Act, it says, like, to violate the Logan Act, you have to be, like, trying to influence the conduct of a foreign government, and so perhaps they might have legally thought of this as, maybe they looked at the transcript of the conversation and they said, well, the sanctions came up in the conversation, but if you look at the conversation, General Flynn wasn't trying to influence anything Russia was doing. At least that's not clear from the conversation. So maybe they thought something like, by the letter of the law, General Flynn didn't violate the Logan Act. I don't know. That's an interesting legal question. But they did say they don't think he violated. They did two things. Sean Spicer said the White House doesn't think General Flynn did anything illegal, and they also said they don't think General Flynn did anything wrong. So the entire issue, the entire reason, according to Sean Spicer, that General Flynn was asked to resign by President Trump was a loss of trust. And this loss of trust was a result of several things, not just this incident. I mean, partly it was a result of this incident because General Flynn initially told Mike Pence, hey, I didn't talk about the sanctions with the Russian ambassador, and then it came out it did. But to emphasize, Sean Spicer said there was an evolving and eroding level of trust as a result of this situation and a series of other questionable instances. And we don't know what those other questionable instances are. So there's a lot more to come out about this story, but those are the big points that came out from Sean Spicer today, which I thought were, definitely new news. A lot of times you'll watch these press briefings and it's mostly spin on either side, but this was a lot of news that came out in this press briefing, so I wanted to report that to you. I also want to check if you guys have sent in any comments. I've been going over this press briefing, but to repeat, if you want to send in comments or ask questions, go to my Twitter feed. It's at Lookner, at Lookner, and direct message me. You can also follow me if you'd like. And if you follow me, I'll tell you whenever I'm doing breaking news in the future, give you a little alert. And also, you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. I'd love to hear any thoughts while we're on the air right now of thoughts you have about either this whole situation with General Flynn or the press briefing itself. So let me know. I'm just checking right now my notifications here. I see Karen L. Berry says, but no one has never been prosecuted under the Logan Act since it was written in 1799, and only one person has been indicted. So thank you, Karen. I'd heard something about this. That this law hadn't been. No one's been prosecuted since it came into effect. I'm not sure about the exact facts. I'll trust you on this. But I don't know all about this. But here, one possibility is that I don't know. There's a lot. Perhaps there were other people who could have been prosecuted for this and weren't. Perhaps the difference here is that normally something like this isn't made public. Normally, if there's evidence that an ambassador, that if a representative of the government had this kind of conversation, it wouldn't get released to the public, and hence there wouldn't be a prosecution. So maybe this case is unique because this stuff got released to the public, and now because it's released to the public, the Justice Department will feel like they have to do something about it. So, but a fair point Karen L. Berry raises. Let's see here. Let's see. Parade Driver writes in, Flynn's story is about as sexy as a Tom Clancy novel. It will be old news quick. Mainstream media wants a protest-worthy story to keep their base riled up. Thank you, Parade Driver, for your input. Appreciate it. I'll say this, though, Parade Driver. I think the media could try to build this into a big story. I mean, I'll say this. So, I agree that this story should have some attention paid to it. I don't think it should have no attention paid to it. But the level of outrage and anger and interest in this story, especially from the left, but also from the mainstream media in general, who I think leans left, but just all these mainstream media outlets, the level on it, this to me is a sign of there's a lot of people out there who just don't like President Trump. And they are looking for stories to confirm their feelings about President Trump and to attack President Trump on. And the level I'm seeing again, I feel like the story should be reported, and I feel like perhaps General Flynn did something improper. I'd have to see the transcript and stuff like that. But turning this into oh my gosh, clearly there's Russian influence and Russia's running the presidency. I saw somebody, I don't know if it was somebody from the New York Times or the Washington Post. It was some mainstream media organization, and he tweeted out something this morning which was we have to get to the bottom of this. Who is President Trump loyal to? Us or Russia? And it's this overreaction to this story. It's portraying this story like President Trump himself there was video surfacing of him going to Russia and planning an attack on America. That's the level of reaction we're getting from this story. And I just feel like it's overstated given what the story is. Just because General Flynn had a conversation with the Russian ambassador, even if he discussed sanctions, even if he said, hey, the Obama administration just came out with these sanctions, but we want to try to work with you a little better. So if you guys don't overreact to these sanctions, that'll help us have a better relationship with you. Even if he said that, he could. It's perfectly reasonable for him to be doing that with the interest of the United States in mind. him saying that is no evidence whatsoever that he's in bed with Russia or trying to favor Russia or isn't loyal to the U.S. I do think General Flynn and President Trump thinks it's in the United States' best interest to have a better relationship with Russia. They have said that numerous times. And General Flynn could have easily thought, hey, to have a better relationship with Russia, I should give them a heads up that we're not going to be so harsh on the sanctions front, so they shouldn't overreact to this new sanctions at the end of Obama's administration. Now, if that's illegal, he shouldn't have done it, but I don't know exactly what he said. But the press is reacting as if this is a sign that General Flynn is loyal to Russia and not us, and that's just not true at all. It is somebody who had the best interests of America in mind, that's something they would do. And I'll say this, while it hasn't come out in public that other people have done this, I guarantee you other representatives of other incoming governments have done something similar. I don't have the evidence, but it just seems obvious they would do this. And there's that video, from a while back when Dmitry, is it Medvedev or whoever was the president or prime minister of Russia, and President Obama early in administration, they were doing some public appearance, and then they thought the mics were off, and at the end Obama leaned over to him and said hey, things will get better in our relations and stuff. They have these kind of talks, these off the record talks, and it's just having off the record talks, or what you think is off the record, and talking about what you're going to do with your policy, even though it's not public knowledge, giving a signal hey, in the future we're going to do this. That's not a sign of disloyalty to America. And there's this giant wave today, and the congressmen who came out calling for this, they're calling for this independent investigation into General Flynn and President Trump, and implying that this is connected to the Russia, controlling our election and being disloyal to Russia. It's just unreasonable. It's, if you want to say, hey, I think General Flynn was trying to help America, but he crossed the line. Okay, that's an argument. I have to think about it, but I can see the argument. I feel what's happening here is there's a lot of people out there in the mainstream media who just hate President Trump, and they're just so looking for a story to jump on, and they see the story and they just jump on it in these ways that aren't justified by the story. So that's my thought. So anyways, I was about to look at your comments and I started ranting, but Parade Driver, I guess to get back to your comment, I would say, I think the media is going to try to make this a sexier story than it is by adding all of these elements of it shows that General Flynn is disloyal, it shows that President Trump is loyal to Russia instead of the United States. It shows that Russia was trying to interfere with our elections. They will connect these things that I think are not connected. Okay, so again, we are talking here. We're having some live coverage this afternoon about Sean Spicer's press briefing that he did, where he gave a number of new facts about the General Flynn's resignation last night as National Security Advisor. I'll go over those facts in a second, but first I just want to give you a chance, let you know if you want to comment, if you want to send in a comment, I'm happy to read it, or a question. The way to do that is go to Twitter, @Lookner is my handle, @Lookner, @LOOKNER, and you can direct message me there, or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Thank you for joining me, by the way. Thank you to the moderators for moderating the chat. Appreciate you joining here. Just today, because Sean Spicer gave this news, it was a very newsworthy briefing today. I wanted to come on here and read rights. I want to just give you the update about what happened. So I have a comment here I want to get to. It looks like a question. Joanne Goldsnyder writes, Steve, Flynn had conversations with Russia. Hillary had a private server in her house. Why was the left not screaming then? Totally agree with you, Joanne. It's the level of outrage, not just on the left, but from the supposedly neutral mainstream media about this, how they think that this reveals disloyalty to America, and yet there's all this stuff with the Clintons, or with Hillary Clinton with the private server, not worrying about that, with the Clinton Foundation, and it just feels like the outrage I am hearing about this from the mainstream media, to me, is way more than I heard about Hillary Clinton's private server and the Clinton Foundation stuff. So, Joanne, I agree with you. Thank you for the comment. Let's see, we have a couple comments here. Becca at Author Ann Baker says they need to release those transcripts ASAP. So that's a very good point, Becca. I don't know. So first of all, these are the transcripts you're talking about. There are transcripts that exist reportedly of General Flynn's conversation or conversations with the Russian ambassador. And Becca is saying, hey, they got to release these transcripts. And I do think it would be helpful if the transcripts are released, because then you could see what exactly General Flynn discussed with the Russian ambassador. I mean, so even if he discussed the sanctions, did it come up for like 5 seconds? Was it just like, hey, there are these sanctions, and they didn't really talk about, maybe General Flynn didn't at all talk about, whether the Trump administration would lessen the sanctions or not. So it would be helpful to have those transcripts. However, I'll say this, I don't know if they can release them, because for all you know, they're like top secret and they can't be released. So who knows? Who knows if they can be released? One other point while we're on this releasing stuff that I think is worth mentioning is Sean Spicer in his press conference did for a moment raise this possibility that these transcripts were leaked to people in the government. And Sean Spicer did take a couple of minutes and say, we should be worried about these politically motivated leaks, and he thought that was being underreported. And actually, President Trump sent out a tweet about that this morning. I don't know if you saw this, but I'll read that tweet because that's relevant here. President Trump sent out a tweet this morning, and it said, the real story here is, why are there so many illegal leaks coming out of Washington? Will those leaks be happening as I deal on North Korea, etc.? So Sean Spicer also said today in the briefing, we should be talking about these leaks more. So I see another comment here. Miss Teresa says, hi. Flynn was not a mere citizen. He was a key member of the president-elect's team. It is routine for such to speak with counterparts. Be ready as soon as possible, for example. And to add to the weirdness, this morning, Fox, Lou Dobbs, and Newsbrief on terrestrial radio I was listening to all had a story stating directly that Barack Obama had a shadow government or something to that effect to oppose President Trump. And those were the only 3 mainstream media I listened to. So one thing, thank you, Ms. Teresa. One thing Ms. Teresa is pointing out is, I've seen this story that came out today. There was a Breitbart story that came out today, which is very interesting if you have a chance to read it. And the Breitbart story is about supposedly how Reince Priebus's job as chief of staff is maybe on the rocks, and maybe they're looking for other people to replace Reince Priebus. But one thing this story said is that, according to this story in Breitbart, there are some, and I can't remember whether it was the author of the story or a source in the story, but somebody in the story said there are a bunch of people like Sally Yates who are Obama holdovers from the Obama administration, like temporarily filling posts that haven't been filled yet in the Trump administration. And there's this view out there that these people are like sleeper cells and they're waiting to like subvert the Trump administration. I have no idea if this is true, but this is what Ms. Teresa is referring to. But if you want to know more about that view, I would look up this Breitbart article today that came out about Reince Priebus. Google it and you'll find it. It's something to do with replacing that Reince Priebus's job is on the rocks. It's on Breitbart. So it's an issue you could look into. So let me see if there's other comments here I have to get to. Joey NP says, do you think the deep state is trying to get its war with Russia? So it sounds like you're saying, Joey, do I think that somebody is going, that people, because General Flynn was close to Russia, or closer than some people might be, was somebody trying to get him fired within the government because they have anti-Russia sentiment and they want war with Russia? Well, my personal opinion is I don't think any reasonable person wants war with Russia. I think that would be a bad thing for everybody involved. Perhaps there could be interests in the government who leaked the General Flynn interviews because they have a beef with Flynn, or they have something against the Trump administration, or like you said, Joey, perhaps they don't want better relations with Russia. They might be suspicious of Russia, and perhaps somebody is doing it for that reason. I don't necessarily think they want war with Russia, but Joey, it's up in the air right now why exactly this information about General Flynn was released, and did somebody intentionally release it, and why? So a good question, Joey. I don't have an answer for you. I think there's definite possibilities here. If you ask me, I think the best probability is because both President Trump and General Flynn had some conflict with the intelligence community. So President Trump said some things about the intelligence community that some people, the intelligence community were offended by. General Flynn has a history of having disagreements with some people, the intelligence community. And also, there are clearly people in the government who don't like President Trump. I think to me, it's very possible that these leaks came from somebody in the government who was either anti-Trump, anti-Flynn, or some combination of the two. But I don't know, so I'm just throwing that out there. You asked for my opinion, and that's what I'm saying. Again, we are covering here the recent, just a little while ago, press briefing by Sean Spicer, where he gave some new information about General Flynn's resignation, which I will go over in a second. If you want to write in and make a comment or ask a question, I'm happy to read it on the air. I'm Steve Lookner, and you can go to my Twitter, which is @Lookner, @LOOKNER. Feel free to follow me. But also, if you want to send in a comment while we're on the air here, direct message me at @Lookner, @LOOKNER, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. So, just to recap, for those of you who joined late, there were a bunch of new things about General Flynn's resignation as National Security Advisor last night that Sean Spicer revealed today in this press briefing. It was very newsworthy press briefing. So let me just go down really quick. I won't, for those of you who have been with the stream, I won't bore you by doing it in full time. I will briefly talk about the main new points that Sean Spicer said. New point one, Sean Spicer said that President Trump asked General Flynn to resign. It's not that General Flynn resigned on his own. President Trump asked General Flynn to resign. Point two, that came out in the briefing today. President Trump asked General Flynn to resign because he had lost confidence, he had lost trust in General Flynn. He asked him to resign because he lost trust in General Flynn. That's the reason. Point three that came out during the briefing today. President Trump lost trust in General Flynn, not just because of the incident with the Russian ambassador, but also because of a longer series of incidents. So what Sean Spicer said is that, sure, General Flynn talked to the Russian ambassador and then didn't originally tell the administration fully what he had talked about, and that caused President Trump to lose some trust. But this trust had been eroding and evolving over a longer period of time, and Sean Spicer said the eroding and evolving level of trust was a result of this situation and a series of other questionable instances, and he said that's what caused President Trump to ask General Flynn to resign. Sean Spicer did not say what that series of other questionable instances are. We don't know what they are, but he said there were a number of things General Flynn did which caused, in addition to the stuff with the Russian ambassador, which caused President Trump to lose trust in him. Another very important point that Sean Spicer said in the briefing was that the administration's position was that not only did General Flynn not do anything illegal when he talked to the Russian ambassador about sanctions, he didn't do anything wrong when he talked to the Russian ambassador about sanctions. So, according to Sean Spicer, the Trump administration feels General Flynn did nothing illegal and nothing wrong when he talked to the Russian ambassador about sanctions. So all those were key points that came out, new points that came out today in this press briefing. Very newsworthy. I'm going to stay on a little longer. If you have any more comments, feel free to send them in. I think some people just sent them in right now. Or somebody sent in a message. Connor Wells writes in, "Hello, Steve. 2 questions from the UK. Welcome from the UK. Who do you think will replace General Flynn, and do you think it was an attempt to disrupt President Trump? I believe the replacement for General Flynn should be General Petraeus." So I have heard several names floated about who will be the permanent replacement for General Flynn. The temporary replacement, I believe, is it Joseph Kellogg? Is that what his name is? Am I getting this right? Let me look so I don't lead you astray. Joseph Kellogg. Let's see. Yes, General Joseph Kellogg. So he's the interim National Security Advisor, but I've heard a number of names mentioned for the new permanent one. General Petraeus is Connor Wells, one of the names I've heard mentioned, but there is this baggage that General Petraeus had. This is something other people have said too, which is, he had that thing where he gave some classified information to this woman he was dating, who was also, or seeing, who was also writing some story or book about him. So you might think that President Trump doesn't want to go with General Petraeus because there are these issues with him. We want somebody with no issues that the left can get excited and angry about. And there are a couple of people who I've seen mentioned, and I'll confess, I don't really know anything about them. So I have no I don't know which one of them will get it. And personally, I don't know enough about them at this point who I think the front runner is. So I wish I could give you a better answer for your question, Connor, but I'm honest here. Right side, we're honest, Tom. That's what I know about this situation so far. Do I think it was an attempt to disrupt President Trump? I don't know, because I do think that General Flynn also had some enemies in the intelligence community and in the military community. So there's some really interesting stuff out there you can read about General Flynn. I'll tell you, there's one article, a couple articles I read. Maybe I can call them up here and after I say this and let you know about them. But I did read some stuff about, so the military, some people in the military have a problem with General Flynn because he got political. There's this tradition in the military of officers not being political and staying out of politics. And a number of people in the military supposedly were very upset with General Flynn for taking political stances, first of all on things like Islam, but second of all for jumping into the Trump campaign, President Trump's campaign. And they think it's bad for the military to be overtly political. So there's military people who have a beef with General Flynn over that stuff. There's also people in the intelligence community who have a beef with General Flynn because he wrote this article that was very critical of the intelligence gathering by the military in Afghanistan. And basically he said things like, the military, when they're gathering intelligence, it's all about gathering intelligence on targets and not enough about gathering intelligence on like civilians and how the civilians feel about things. And it was like a big deal to do this because he published this thing. He said this paper he wrote publicly, and publicly publishing a paper critical of the people who you work with in the intelligence community is not seen as like a good thing to do. So there's a number of people who had personal issues, personal/professional issues with General Flynn, and this. Perhaps somebody was trying to get back at General Flynn by releasing this information about what he talked about with, if it was indeed intentionally released, perhaps somebody was trying to get back at General Flynn or had a beef with General Flynn, and that's why this information about the Russian ambassador conversation with General Flynn got released. But it could have been somebody trying to get, who didn't like President Trump, and was trying to get at President Trump and slow or harm his administration. Who knows? Big question. I don't know the answer, but a good question, Connor Wells, so thank you. Let's see if there's any more questions or comments here. We have, I'm looking here for notifications. And let me check my email real quick. And I also want to check Twitter just to make sure there's not something happening right now that I've missed. Again, we are here giving some live post coverage of Sean Spicer's very newsworthy news briefing today. Let me just check my Twitter feed while we're on there just to make sure something else didn't come out really recently, like an important tweet or something. I'm looking over real quick to see if there's new information. I'm not seeing anything at the moment. And while we're on the air, I should say, as I always say, if you have like breaking information that comes out, one thing we're happy to do here is help us cover the news here at Right Side. So if I'm on this stream or on any other stream I'm on, if something comes out and you think I should know about it, a tweet or a piece of news, just direct message me at Lookner on Twitter at LOOKNER, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv, and I will pass along that information. Some people did that last night. They let me know about some things going on, which was really helpful, so I appreciate it. Okay, so it looks like the news is we're pretty much caught up on the news going on with this for now. I'm sure other stuff will come out later today. This is what's come out today about this. Some new information came out about General Flynn. There were also, I don't know if you saw it, there were a bunch of Democratic congressmen talking about how we have to have this independent investigation of the Trump and General Flynn's tied to Russia and ties to Russia, and they make it sound like there's this giant conspiracy in the Trump administration to benefit Russia and undermine the U.S. I don't think that's the case, but I also think they are jumping on this for political gain. I don't think it looks good on their side to do that. I don't like when either side does this. I don't like when one side or the other takes an issue and I think misrepresents the issue or overreacts to it just for political reasons. I hate that on both sides. So that's how I take some of the stuff that's going on today. All right, so let's see. Somebody says WikiLeaks. Pam C writes something in. Pam, you sent me a message. Pam C. So I'm going to look at it. Pam, I don't see a link here. It's something about something that was on WikiLeaks, but I can't see it. So feel free to send it to me again, Pam C. And Pam C is one of the moderators. Thank you, moderators, again. Okay, so I think we're going to end this pretty soon here because we caught you up on the Sean Spicer stuff, the new stuff that came out in his press briefing today. So we did that. Got some great comments and questions from you guys about this whole issue. Let's see if there's more stuff here. Sorry, I just keep checking to make sure I want to make sure I get to all your comments and questions. So if you have, I'll stay on for a few more minutes, then I'm going to get back to work. And if there's any other breaking news today or tonight, we will come on and report it to you. But if anyone has any last minute questions they want to ask, definitely shoot me a direct message at Lookner at Lookner. Feel free to follow me as well on Twitter at Lookner and or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Oh, Pam C says she sent me a story and it says Pam C. WikiLeaks says U.S. spies, Dems, and press behind Flynn's resignation. This was a tweet from WikiLeaks. And I follow WikiLeaks, and yet I somehow missed this tweet. Let's see. So, you know what happened? This is, I was using a different account for Twitter before I came to Right Side. That was my secret account, so people couldn't see any political tweets by me because I would have lost lots of friends. And then when I switched back and I came out I came out as someone who actually wasn't a complete liberal and actually had some sympathy with moderate and Republican views, unlike a lot of people in Los Angeles. I started using my original Twitter feed, and I forgot to follow WikiLeaks when I did that. So thank you. So this tweet said, Pam C. This came out today, and it said, Trump's National Security Advisor Michael Flynn resigns after destabilization campaign by U.S. spies, Democrats, press. So that's what WikiLeaks' view is. WikiLeaks thinks that Michael Flynn resigned due to after a destabilization campaign by U.S. spies, Democrats, and the press. Thank you for the heads up, Pam C. I appreciate it. And thank you for the long-term gift you've given me of reminding me to subscribe to follow WikiLeaks on this account. I can't believe I forgot to do that, so I very much appreciate it. Let's see if there's any more comments. So I will say this: I think at this point we're going to end the stream. I appreciate you joining us for this breaking news coverage. Was it breaking news? It was more of a news alert. I thought it was important news from the Spicer press briefing. If you missed the summary of what he said, you can go back to earlier in this broadcast. But there was actually some important news that came out about General Flynn's resignation from the Spicer briefing. So lots. You know what's crazy? I just had this thought, what happened to the travel ban? That's still happening. The travel ban, I think President Trump is either going to take it to the Supreme Court or is working on a new executive order. But these stories keep coming out and you forget. So who knows? It could be later today, President Trump will say, come out with an executive order about the travel ban. There's all this stuff going on. There's still Obamacare. That's going on. Also, I got annoyed. I tweeted about this if you follow me. So, last week, President Obama sent out that tweet of him, on Richard Branson's boat or whatever, or on vacation with Richard Branson, water skiing or paragliding in the ocean or whatever. And then today, Michelle Obama sends out a picture of her and President Obama's feet, ex-President Obama's feet on the beach. And it's I'm fine with them going on a vacation. Hey, take a lot of vacations. You just worked really hard for 8 years. But to me, them posting these beach vacation photos while America is trying to deal with all these issues, I think it's very inappropriate. The message that conveys to me is, oh, well, we don't actually really care about the country because now that I'm not president, not my problem anymore. And it's like, as an American, shouldn't you be really concerned about these things going on? And you might think, as an American with lots of political influence still, maybe he could be involved in these events as they're going on. So just tweeting out these beach pictures to me is very inappropriate. I will say the same thing if President Trump, when he ends his reign as president, and if during the week after he stops being president, he starts sending out beach vacation photos, I'll say the same thing about President Trump. I don't think it's appropriate for a president who just has finished serving to send out lots of beach vacation, carefree beach vacation photos. That's what they're sending out from the Twitter. So that's my little rant on that. Okay, before we go, we have a couple messages here. Miss Teresa says, let's see, Russia, wasn't there a Beatles song back in the USSR? Idea was to open minds to accepting Russians. Now seems to be the opposite. Thank you, Miss Teresa. And I want to get to Drew's comment. Drew says, hello. Stephen Flynn was let go because he violated the Logan Act. He was talking to Russia about sanctions, saying, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about what Obama is doing." He was not allowed to do this when President Obama was still president. Sean Spicer has lied before in front of the media, so take what he said with a grain of salt. I don't believe the intelligence community purposely got Flynn out if they didn't agree with him. He got caught and lied to Mike Pence. Mike Pence was the one that wanted Flynn out. Doesn't it disturb you, the Trump administration with too many Russia connections like Paul? So Drew's opinion on this is Drew thinks that Mike Pence wanted General Flynn out because General Flynn didn't tell Mike Pence the truth initially about what he said to the Russian ambassador. And Drew, I guess you're saying that Sean Spicer's story today about why President Trump fired. Well, you didn't. I don't know. I don't think you're saying that. That's what you're saying. Is it sounds like you're saying you also said that Flynn was let go because he violated the Logan Act. But Sean Spicer said that according to the administration, he didn't violate the Logan Act. So are you saying that Sean Spicer wasn't being truthful at that point? I mean, Sean Spicer said that pretty strongly. So, but anyways, it's an interesting point of view, Drew. I just want to read it. Oh, you're not Steven, you're Drew. You said hello, Steven. So that's what Drew said. But anyways, Sean Spicer, according to Sean Spicer, President Trump didn't violate the Logan Act. That's what Sean Spicer and the administration thinks. Now, maybe, Drew, you think that that's not what Sean Spicer really thinks. I don't know, but interesting comment, Drew. So, are there any more comments here? Let's see. I think we're about at the end. So anyways, if there's new breaking news coming out tonight, tomorrow, whenever, we will come on and give it to you. I appreciate you joining us today. I appreciate all the interesting comments and questions. And keep watching RSBN. Thank you for watching so much. Thank you, moderators, for moderating the chat. And I hope you have a great day. And I will talk to you all soon. And if, again, feel free to follow me at Lookner, at Lookner. And I promise to send out a tweet whenever we're doing breaking news coverage so you know that this is going on. Okay? And follow Right Side Broadcasting at RSB Network. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.